The courtroom cameras captured the precise instant Richard Bennett made the worst mistake of his life. Standing there with absolute certainty, he pointed straight at his 19-year-old daughter, Emily, his face tight with indignation as he told Judge Judy and the millions watching from home that his ungrateful child needed to learn respect and obedience. What unfolded over the next 12 minutes would become the most replayed courtroom moment of 2024, viewed more than 60 million times online, igniting endless debates, reaction videos, and discussions about the line between parenting and control. This wasn't an ordinary dispute over money. It was the televised collapse of a father's carefully crafted image. Richard Bennett had spent years presenting himself as a devoted parent, but under Judge Judy's scrutiny, that mask was about to shatter, exposing years of manipulation hidden beneath the language of love and responsibility. Richard entered the courtroom that Tuesday morning overflowing with confidence. At 52 years old, the successful corporate executive wore an expensive tailored suit and carried a leather folder packed with what he believed was undeniable proof that his daughter had betrayed him. For weeks, he had rehearsed speeches about sacrifice, gratitude, and disrespectful children. He was convinced Judge Judy would side with him, publicly shame Emily, and force her back under his authority. In Richard's mind, this lawsuit was brilliant. He thought America would admire him for holding his daughter accountable. He imagined himself becoming an example for other parents struggling with rebellious children. What he didn't know was that Emily had spent the past 2 years quietly saving everything: text messages, voicemails, threats, financial demands, manipulative conversations. She had walked into that courtroom carrying evidence that painted a very different picture. Not of a caring father, but of a deeply controlling man who had disguised emotional abuse as parenting for nearly 2 decades. And Richard made one more devastating miscalculation. He underestimated Judge Judy Schindlin. After decades in family court, she could recognize manipulation almost instantly. Before the case even began, she had already noticed the warning signs. On the surface, the lawsuit sounded simple. Richard was suing Emily for $15,000, claiming she owed him money for years of unpaid loans. He had carefully itemized every dollar: $5 for it, $0 for the car he gave her at 16, $3,000 for graduation money, thousands more for birthdays, holidays, and expenses he now insisted had never been gifts. But everyone in that courtroom could feel that this wasn't truly about money. It was about power. Emily sat quietly at the defense table, visibly nervous, clutching her own stack of documents with trembling hands. She was a sophomore in community college, working 2 jobs and living with roommates after finally escaping her father's home 6 months earlier. Her entire life had been controlled. Richard monitored her whereabouts, dictated her friendships, criticized her decisions, and used money as leverage to maintain authority over her. Every gift came attached to invisible conditions. Every favor eventually became ammunition in an argument. After everything I've done for you. Emily had heard that phrase her entire life. Everything changed when she met Jake, a 22-year-old bookstore employee who treated her with patience and kindness. For the first time, she experienced support without control. Encouragement without criticism. Love without conditions. Richard responded exactly as she feared he would. He cut her off financially, demanded the car back, threatened her future. Then he filed the lawsuit, not because he needed the money, but because he needed to punish her for leaving. What Richard didn't realize was that Judge Judy had already seen through him before court even started. The wording in his paperwork, the timing of the lawsuit, the obsessive accounting of parental sacrifices, it all revealed the same thing. This case wasn't about debt, it was about ownership. Richard Bennett had built his entire life around control. In business, he was known as demanding and intimidating. Employees feared crossing him because he kept records of every mistake, storing weaknesses for future leverage. Food at home, Emily became his greatest project. From childhood, Richard never viewed her as an independent person. To him, she represented proof of his success. Everything about her life was carefully curated to reflect well on him. From the outside, Emily appeared fortunate. She attended prestigious schools, wore expensive clothes, took private lessons, and lived in a beautiful home. 4. Richard constantly reminded everyone how much he sacrificed to provide her with opportunities. What nobody saw was the reality behind closed doors. Every aspect of Emily's life was monitored. Richard tracked her phone, 4. Controlled her social media, chose her friends, and demanded detailed explanations for every minute of her day. If she came home even slightly late, he interrogated her relentlessly. Nothing she achieved was ever enough. Perfect report card would lead to criticism about one imperfect grade. Awards became opportunities for comparison. Compliments were always followed by corrections. Fake Richard constantly reinforced the idea that Emily's worth depended entirely on his approval. As she grew older, his control intensified. For her 16th birthday, Richard presented her with a car in front of family and friends, proudly portraying himself as a generous father. What nobody knew was that Emily was required to make the monthly payments herself while obeying strict rules about where she could drive and with whom. The car wasn't freedom. 4. It was surveillance. At 17, Emily wanted to attend prom with a boy Richard disliked. He threatened to take away her college fund if she went. She stayed home crying while he insisted he was only protecting her. Then came Jake. 4. Jake listened to Emily. He encouraged her dreams. He treated her like someone whose opinions mattered. That contrast changed everything. When Richard discovered the relationship, he exploded. He called Jake a loser. 4. He showed up at Emily's campus. He threatened to destroy her future if she continued seeing him. So Emily left. Quickly, with Jake's help, she moved out and blocked her father's number. The instant Richard began speaking in court, 4. The atmosphere shifted. "Your Honor," he announced confidently, gesturing dismissively toward Emily, "I gave this girl everything. The best schools, opportunities, financial support. All I asked for was respect and gratitude. Instead, 4. She abandoned her family for some boyfriend she barely knows." Judge Judy sat silently, studying him. She noticed the way he referred to Emily as "my daughter" instead of using her name. She noticed his aggressive tone, 4. His possessive language, the repeated references to obedience. Most importantly, she heard what existed underneath all his words. The belief that because he spent money raising his child, 4. She now owed him permanent loyalty and submission. Richard pulled documents from his folder dramatically. "I have records of every loan I made to her," he declared. "The car, graduation money, gifts, emergency expenses. Phil, it totals $15,000. Then he added bitterly, "She meets some bookstore employee with no future, and suddenly I'm the villain." Judge Judy leaned forward. "Mr. Bennett," she asked calmly, "when you gave your daughter these items, Fuller, did you clearly tell her they were loans?" Richard hesitated. That tiny pause told Judge Judy everything. "Well," he replied carefully, "not directly. But there's an understanding between parents and children. 4. When you invest in your child, you expect respect and accountability in return." The courtroom fell silent. He had just openly described parenting as an investment expecting returns. Judge Judy's expression hardened. "Faye, so let me understand," she said sharply. "You're telling me birthday presents and Christmas gifts were actually loans?" Richard's frustration surfaced immediately. "Your Honor, parenting is about teaching responsibility. 4. Kids today think they can do whatever they want without consequences." Then he made another mistake. He started lecturing Judge Judy herself. That's when she turned away from him completely and looked at Emily. "Ms. Bennett," 4. She said gently, "would you like to tell me your side?" Emily's hands shook as she opened her folder. "They weren't loans," she whispered. "They were gifts. I have proof." Richard erupted instantly. "She's lying. Flay. She's been manipulated." Judge Judy cut him off immediately. "Mr. Bennett, sit down right now." The entire courtroom froze. For the first time in years, Richard Bennett was no longer controlling the situation. 4. Emily slowly began presenting her evidence. Text messages, birthday cards, payment records, voicemails. Judge Judy picked up a birthday card from Emily's 16th birthday and read it aloud. 4. To my beautiful daughter on your sweet 16. This car is yours, no strings attached, because you deserve the world. Judge Judy looked directly at Richard. 4. Would you care to explain how no strings attached suddenly became a $5,000 debt? Richard's face reddened. "That was before she betrayed me," he snapped. Judge Judy answered instantly. 4. A gift does not stop being a gift because you're angry. Then came the text messages. Judge Judy began reading them aloud. If you don't come home immediately, I'll ruin you financially. You have nothing without me. 4. I own everything you have. You'll come crawling back. Gasps spread across the courtroom. Richard sat frozen. Emily then presented records proving she alone had been making the car payments for years. 4. The vehicle was registered in her name. The insurance was in her name. Judge Judy turned back toward Richard. So let me summarize this, she said coldly. You gave your daughter a car, had her pay for it herself. 4. And now you want it back because she moved out and started dating someone you dislike. That's when Richard completely lost control. He stood up and pointed directly at Judge Judy. 4. You don't understand what it's like raising kids today, he shouted. Children need boundaries. My daughter is my responsibility, my investment. 4. And she doesn't get to walk away because some boyfriend convinced her she deserves independence. The courtroom erupted. Judge Judy's face turned ice cold. Sit down right now. Then came the moment that changed everything. Mr. Bennett, Judge Judy said, her voice razor sharp, you have confused control with parenting. The room became completely silent. You kept receipts on love. You treated your daughter like property instead of a human being. 4. You didn't raise a child. You built a prisoner. And when she finally escaped, you tried to use the legal system to drag her back. She turned toward the cameras. This is emotional abuse. 4. This is what happens when a parent believes financial support entitles them to ownership over another person's life. Richard attempted to interrupt again. Judge Judy silenced him with a single glance. Then she turned back to Emily. 4. Listen to me carefully, she said softly. You do not owe your father $15,000. You do not owe him gratitude for fulfilling his legal obligation as a parent, and you absolutely do not owe him your independence. 4. Emily burst into tears. Judge Judy continued. The evidence clearly shows these were gifts. The harassment, manipulation, and threats afterward reveal the real purpose of this lawsuit. Then she delivered the ruling. 4. Case dismissed with prejudice. The car belongs to Emily. Richard's expression collapsed, but Judge Judy wasn't finished. I'm also awarding Emily $5,000 for emotional distress and harassment. 4. The courtroom exploded with murmurs. Judge Judy leaned forward one final time. Your daughter never belonged to you, Mr. Bennett. Your job as a parent was to prepare her for independence, not punish her for achieving it. 4. Then came the line that would spread across the internet within hours. You need therapy, Mr. Bennett, because your behavior is textbook narcissistic abuse. The gavel slammed down. Case dismissed. Richard stormed from the courtroom, furious, muttering threats under his breath. Emily remained seated, crying with relief, while audience members applauded her courage. Judge Judy quietly stepped down from the bench and spoke privately to her for a moment. Whatever she said made Emily smile through tears for the first time all day. Within hours, the clip exploded online. 4. Millions watched Judge Judy dismantle years of manipulation in real time. Therapists referenced the case in discussions about narcissistic abuse. Support groups shared Emily's story across social media. 4. The hashtag #DefendEmily trended worldwide. Richard's life unraveled quickly afterward. Employees at his company came forward with complaints about his behavior, and public backlash forced his resignation. Meanwhile, 4 strangers raised over $180,000 to support Emily's education. She accepted only enough to cover tuition and donated the rest to organizations helping young adults escape abusive households. 6 months later, Emily was thriving in college, still with Jake, and finally learning how to live without fear. She began sharing her story publicly, inspiring thousands of others to establish boundaries with controlling family members. 4. Judge Judy's defense of Emily became larger than a television moment. For countless people trapped in toxic family dynamics, it was validation. Proof that love does not require obedience. Proof that boundaries are not betrayal. 4. And for many viewers, it was the first time they heard someone in authority say out loud what they had needed to hear their entire lives. Control is not love.